While some heroes of Azeroth were off collecting the Pillars of Creation, and others were collecting powerful artifacts to fend off the Burning Legion, another group of champions went with Khadgar to recover Illidan's body. Gul'dan had taken the corpse of the Betrayer to the ruins of Blackrook Hold, where he performed a spell that ripped Illidan's spirit from his prison and sent it to the Twisting Nether. Gul'dan had caught Maev's Shadow Song trying to follow him, and he left her trapped in the dungeons of Blackrook. Khadgar arrived too late to stop Gul'dan from escaping with Illidan's now empty body, but he managed to free Maiev, and the two headed back to Dalaran to regroup. While preparing for the next move, a mysterious object was sent crashing down to the Broken Isles. The object held a message from Khadgar's long-lost friend, Turalyon, and the Paladin's message claimed that Velen held the answers, and that time was short. The heroes of Azeroth rushed to the Exodar, home of the prophet Velen, only to find it under siege by the Burning Legion. The Eredar Lord, High General Rakish, had been sent to the Exodar, along with a massive invasion force, in order to finish off the Draenei, as well as kill the Naaru located in the city. Khadgar and his friends fought their way through the demons and met up with Velen, who was evacuating citizens. They tell Velen of the object they found, and of Turalyon's message. The prophet claims that the item that they received was called Light's Heart, the core of the Prime Naaru Zera. And the only way to reactivate the core was with the power of one of Zera's descendants. And the Naaru, Oros, the one located in the Exodar, was the last of Zera's line. The Draenei pushed forward with the heroes of Azeroth to Oros' chambers, only to find that Rakish had already succeeded in killing the Naaru. After a brief fight, Rakish fell to the feet of Velen, dying. In that moment, Velen knelt down and held the dying Eredar. He told those around him that he had once had a wife and a son back on Argus, but when the Draenei attempted to leave the planet, he was betrayed, and his family never escaped. But Velen was given a vision of this exact moment only thousands of years prior. It turned out that Kil'jaeden had captured and twisted Velen's son and turned him into a demon lord, renaming him Rakish. Then Kil'jaeden sent Rakish off to fight his father to the death. The adventurers headed back to Dalaran to find a new way to open Light's Heart and leave Velen to his grief. By using the Tears of Elune, Khadgar and pals were able to awaken Zera's core. Zera sends them a message telling them that they need to stop Gul'dan from summoning Sargeras' spirit into the world of Azeroth. And to do that, they're going to need Illidan's soul back in his body. Illidan's body was being held in the heart of Suramar, the Nighthold, and his spirit was now dwelling in Helheim. Quickly, the heroes ventured back into Helheim, and they used Light's Heart as a vessel which they could store Illidan's soul in. Now they just needed to break into the city of Suramar. Former First Arcanist Thalisra washed up on the shores of the lands outside the city of Suramar, and she began to suffer from withdrawal from the Nightwell, turning into a Nightfallen. Thalisra was determined to not fully transform into a Withered, and she was hell-bent on stopping High Magistrix Elisand, so she sent an arcane message to Dalaran asking for aid. Khadgar and crew were out dealing with the Pillars of Creation and hunting Gul'dan at the time, so a few other champions of Azeroth answered Thalisra's call. Arriving in Suramar lands, they found the Arcanist and followed her lead as she attempted to find and recruit as many banished Nightborn as she could, as well as find shelter that would be adequate to act as a base of operations. Thalisra and her new allies were able to find and recruit a handful of Nightfallen elves, and they even unearthed Shalaran, an underground ruin that Withered avoided. Thalisra had learned about a special seed that could be used to cure the Nightfallen of their Arcwine withdrawal, and ventured out to the nearby lands to find it. There she found the Night Elf Faradin, who was the caretaker of said seed. Faradin agreed to aid the Nightfallen since he believed that they would stop Elisand and the demons, and he planted the seed in the heart of Shalaran. The seed then grew into an Arcandor, which is a magical fruit tree which radiated both arcane and nature magic. Thalisra and her allies began to recruit not only banished Nightborn, but also rebels hiding out in the city of Suramar itself. While they recruited new forces, they also started to take control of the areas around the city, clearing out Elisand's forces as well as some of the Burning Legion. Finally, the Nightfallen were able to set up teleportation points which allowed for instantaneous travel throughout their controlled territory, and even into some rebel-friendly spots inside Suramar City. By the time Khadgar and crew returned to Dalaran, the Nightfallen had not only taken massive steps towards taking control of Suramar, but the Arkandor tree had also restored them back to their normal, Nightborn selves. The champions of Azeroth began to formulate a plan. They would muster up a united force to assault the city of Suramar. Then, once they break the outer walls, they'll split up into two groups. Group 1 would be Thalyssra and her Nightfallen rebels, Lady Liadrin and her Sindorai offensive, Tyrande Whisperwind and her sentinels, and Varisa Windrunner and the Silver Covenant. And they would attack the gates of the Nighthold, the stronghold which Elisand, the Nightwell, and Gul'dan were located. While the elves distract the main force of the Suramar Nightborn, Khadgar would lead a small strike force into the Nighthold, rescue Illidan's body, and assassinate Gul'dan, then get out. The Blood Elf, High Elf, and Night Elf forces arrived in Suramar, and their united armies break through the defenses of the city, pushing their way to the gates of the Nighthold. However, Elisand goes out to meet the enemy armies and unleashes a powerful arcane spell that traps all the elven forces in a time stasis, freezing them in place forever. Khadgar is forced to abandon the old plan and quickly regroups. While Khadgar isn't powerful enough to undo all of Elisand's magic, he can free Thalyssra, Liadrin, Varisa, and Tyrande. Once the elven leaders are freed from the time magic, Khadgar decides to add them to a strike force. The new plan is to just break into the Nighthold and quickly make their way to Illidan's body. As the Azerothian strike force cuts their way through demon and Nightborn alike, it became apparent that it was too late to retrieve Illidan's body. Gul'dan had already begun their ritual to summon Sargeras into it. The team had a showdown with Elisand, killing the Grand Magistrix and then adjusting their plan one last time. Khadgar would use the Pillars of Creation to counteract Gul'dan's spell, and then produce enough magical power that would allow Illidan's soul, which was trapped inside Light's heart, to transfer back into his mortal body. While the Archmage began his plan, the rest of the strike force started fighting Gul'dan. They were able to weaken the Warlock, but he had already successfully summoned a portion of Sargeras' spirit into Illidan's corpse. While the strike force held back the demonized Illidan, Khadgar used the Pillars of Creation plus the Eye of Aman'Thul, the last Pillar of Creation, which conveniently was located at the Nighthold itself, to remove Sargeras' spirit from Illidan's body, as well as successfully transfer the Betrayer's soul from Light's heart back into his restored mortal shell. Before the dust cleared, a newly resurrected Illidan killed the weakened Gul'dan and vowed to end the Burning Legion once and for all. With Gul'dan dead, the Nighthold in control of the forces of Azeroth, and Illidan's storm rage returned to the world of the living, it was time to assault the Broken Shore once again. But before that, the Pillars of Creation were going to be needed in order to completely seal off the demon portal, and the Eye of Aman'Thul was a Pillar of Creation. The Eye was used to create and power the Nightwell, and with the Eye gone, the Nightwell would eventually become unstable and fade away. Thalyssra, now leader of the Nightborn, decided to destroy the Nightwell and free her people from its addiction. The Blood Elves offered to help the Nightborn, since they knew what it was like to be addicted to a magical well and then lose said magical well. And while that was happening, Illidan had sent his loyal Illidari back to the Vault of the Wardens, where they cleared out the demons inside, as well as dealing with Cordana Felsong. But the real goal wasn't to kill demons, it was the retrieval of the Sargerite Keystone, which was locked away in the vault along with the Illidari. Once the Keystone was collected and all the forces of Azeroth, now called the Armies of Legionfall, were ready, they set off to the Broken Shore once again. But this time, there would be no failure. The army of Legionfall quickly began to assault the Broken Shore. With their powerful artifacts and allies, they quickly pushed through the demon-fortified island, eventually making their way to the tomb of Sargeras. Demons and corrupted spirits littered the inside of the tomb, but more importantly than that, Kil'jaeden had arrived on Azeroth. The Deceiver was working on a way to resurrect the avatar of Sargeras, the thing the Guardian Egwene had sealed away so many years ago. Khadgar, Illidan, Maiev, and Velen pushed into the tomb while the heroes of Azeroth went up, replacing the Pillars of Creation back in their old spots, sealing the demon portal shut. The armies of Legionfall pressed deeper into the tomb, and eventually were confronted by Kil'jaeden, who had managed to activate the avatar of Sargeras, if only partially. While the champions fought off the avatar, Kil'jaeden, seeing the avatar's defeat inching ever nearer, opened up a small portal and fled to the twisting nether. Khadgar and crew chased after him, ending up on Kil'jaeden's ship speeding through the nether. There they battled the Demon Lord, who grew more and more desperate as he was being whittled down by the Azerothian heroes. In a final gambit, Kil'jaeden led his ship to the Legion world of Argus, now ruined and broken by Fel energy. Kil'jaeden, defeated, sent his ship crashing into his homeworld. But before the ship crashed, Illidan used the Sargerite keystone to open a portal to Azeroth. Khadgar teleported them back to the broken shore right before Kil'jaeden's ship crashed into the planet. A solid victory had been won against the Legion, with the death of one of their most powerful leaders, and the portal of the Tomb of Sargeras now closed. But when the heroes looked up towards the sky, they didn't see the dawning of a new day, but the portal Illidan had opened only growing. The betrayer had taken fate into his own hands, and planned to personally assault Argus, and put a stop to the burning Legion permanently. Back in Elwynn Forest, the humans of Stormwind were unsure of what to make of Anduin as their new king. He was still young and nowhere near as battle-hardened as his father was. Anduin had heard his people talking about how his father was so strong and how he was so weak. Anduin then overheard Velen and Genn, his two main advisors, talking about him. Velen had seen a vision of Anduin as a great leader, while Genn believed the king to be too soft. Anduin agreed with Genn, and he secretly set out to the broken shore, to the spot where his father died. There, Anduin embraced with the lingering spirit of his father, and took up Varian's sword, Charlemagne. Afterwards, Anduin became much more active in the fight against the Burning Legion, so much so that the demons even tried to assassinate him, only for the king to kill the demon assassin on his own. The son of the wolf began to train his body and his spirit in order to become a king worthy of his people, and to become strong enough to make the peace he believed was achievable. The prophet Velen had ordered the creation of a new ship after the Battle of the Exodar. This new ship, called the Vindicator, was going to be the launch vessel used by the forces of Azeroth to invade the world of Argus. While the armies of Legionfall prepared for the final front against the Legion, Magni Bronzebeard had reached out to the world soul of Azeroth. Azeroth communicated with Magni that Sargeras was coming, as well as telling him that the world soul of Argus had been ravaged and tortured by the Burning Legion, becoming a twisted, fell version of its former self, and that Argus's soul was being used to fuel the powers of Sargeras and the Burning Legion. Magni relayed this information to Khadgar, and now the armies of Legionfall had two clear-cut goals. Goal 1, invade Argus and locate the Army of the Light and return Light's heart to them, and Goal 2, sever the world soul of Argus from the Burning Legion, thus removing their source of energy and power. Not all of the armies of Azeroth were leaving Argus. Many of Azeroth's forces were greatly depleted after their battles with the Legion, and more importantly, the Burning Legion was using the rift created by Illidan to continuously launch attacks, and so Azeroth needed forces to repel the demon threat. So Lady Liadrin and her Blood Elf warriors accompanied Velen and his Draenei vanguard on the Vindicator, as well as a small strike force of champions, including Varisa Windrunner and her nephew Eretor. Once all the forces were ready to roll, the Vindicator set off through the rift and headed straight for Argus. When the Vindicator reached Argus, the Army of Light's flagship, the Zenadar, arrived to meet them in the land of Crokun. But as the Zenadar uncloaked itself, the Burning Legion forces stationed in Crokun shot the ship down, crashing it into the lands below. Velen and Illidan led an immediate rescue squad to the surface in order to save those on the Zenadar. While fighting their way through the demons, the rescue team encountered a group of Krokul, which were Draenei who never left Argus, but were poisoned with Fel energy. Many of the Krokul were being kept as slaves for the demons, and the Azerothians freed many of them on their way to the Zenadar. The Crow led the heroes to a small shelter that their people had, and it was there that Velen ran into the leader of the Free Crow, Chieftain Hatun. Hatun was friends with Velen back when they both lived on Argus, and he was pretty pissed that the Draenor had abandoned their home and their people. As Velen and Hatun began to argue, High Exarch Turalyon, leader of the Army of Light's military, showed up and encouraged unity between the ancient friends. Turalyon recruited the Crow into the Light's mission of destroying the Legion and promised to aid them in return. He set off to deal with the demon's slave master, Pit Lord Aganar, who had been threatening the Crow. During the fight between Paladin and Pit Lord, Alleria Windrunner showed up to swing the battle in favor of Turalyon. After which, the Crow forces, calling themselves the Argusian Reach, followed Turalyon and Alleria with joining the Azerothian forces on Argus. It's been a while since we talked about Turalyon and Alleria, so let's just do a quick recap about who they are and what they've been up to. Alleria and Turalyon both fought alongside Anduin Lothar in Warcraft 2, and they, alongside Khadgar, led the Alliance expedition through the Dark Portal in order to stop the Orc Ner'zhul. Unfortunately for them, and for the planet Draenor, they failed to stop Ner'zhul in time, and the Orcs succeeded in opening up an uncountable amount of portals on Draenor, ripping the world apart. Alleria and Turalyon were separated from the other Alliance forces on Draenor, and the Twisting Nether was beginning to merge with the planet. There, they were greeted by the Prime Naru Zira. Zira assured the Alliance leaders that they had a great part to play in the stopping of the Burning Legion, and in the saving of Azeroth, and so the Paladin and the Ranger Captain were recruited into the Army of the Light. There they remained on the Zenadar, going on raids against the Burning Legion, and constantly fighting against the demons in the name of the Light. They were also looking for this so-called Emerald Star, which was supposed to be the key for stopping the Legion permanently. During a raid on a demon prison, Alleria was attacked by a void being, and she became infected by the void itself. However, the only real side effect of the void infection was that the Ranger now started having visions. She began investigating the void, seeing it as a tool to help stop the Legion. She even learned of a powerful void master called the Locust Walker, who was an ethereal that had learned to control the void. When Alleria proposed the idea of weaponizing the void to Zira, the Naru responded by telling the elf that she was never to use the void again, under the penalty of death. Time passed differently in the Twisting Nether, which is where the Zenadar was mainly doing battle against the Burning Legion, and so the 20 years on Azeroth was 500 years in the Nether. During that time, Alleria had seen visions of Argus and the Emerald Star. When the Army of the Light noticed the Burning Legion invading Outland, Alleria and Turalyon took that as an opportunity to go down to Argus and investigate. There they discovered that the Emerald Star was really the world soul of Argus itself, and that the world soul was the thing reviving the demons of the Burning Legion, which made their army limitless. The two were attacked while trying to flee, and Alleria used the power of the Void to teleport them to safety. Unfortunately, while Alleria had been fine using the Void to escape, Turalyon had not. The Paladin had been promoted to Exarch and was now infused with the Light. Being inside the Void Rift was torture. After they left the Void Rift, Alleria was still radiating Void Essence, and when she reached out to help Turalyon, their hands burned at each other's touch. Alleria then left the heartbroken Turalyon, telling him to return to the Zenadar, while she figured out what to do about the Void. Sometime later, Alleria would be captured and imprisoned by the Burning Legion. Her cellmate ended up being the Locust Walker himself. Locust Walker took on Alleria as a pupil and instructed her on how to use the Void. The two then escaped the Legion prison, and Alleria was taught some mastery of the Void that she wielded. Years passed, and the Army of the Light continued their raids against the demons. During one of those raids, Turalyon was defeated in battle, and Alleria saw a vision of him on the verge of death, and so she abandoned the Lotus Walker and his training and portaled to her soulmate's aid. After using the Void to save Turalyon's life, she promised to never abandon him again. Turalyon's response was begging her to leave. He claimed that Zira would not tolerate Alleria's use of the Void, but the Ranger didn't care. When they returned to the Zenadar, the Prime Naru imprisoned Alleria for her use of the Void. There, Alleria was kept imprisoned on the Zenadar until it was shot down on Argus. She was able to escape the ruined ship and rush to the aid of Turalyon, which brings us back to the present. Turalyon and Alleria led a strike force to the Zenadar in order to save the light-forged Draenor inside, as well as recover the dormant Prime Naru Zira. Magni Bronzebeard had discovered that the souls of the Pantheon had been found by the Burning Legion, and were being twisted and tortured inside Antorus, the core of the planet Argus, the throne of the Burning Legion. Agrimar had already succumbed to the will of the Legion, and his twisted spirit was placed inside an avatar and set loose on the world of Argus. While the forces of Azeroth, alongside the Army of Light, struck at Legion command posts and armories, they were also searching for the 3 pieces of the Crown of the Triumvirate, a powerful relic that would allow the heroes to enter Antorus. Guarding a piece of the Crown of the Triumvirate was the Dark Naru Luora, who stayed behind in order for the Draenei to flee Argus all those years ago. The Windrunner sisters go scouting to find a way into the seat of the Triumvirate in order to collect the last piece of the crown. They encounter several servants of the Void who are corrupting Broken in attempts to turn them into warriors of the Void themselves. The sisters do what they can to stop the Void, but they ultimately run into Viceroy Nazhar, leader of the Void Ethereals on Argus. Nazhar opens up a Void Tear to escape, and the Windrunners pursue him, only to be trapped inside the Void. There they're saved by the Locust Walker, who opens a tear of his own to get them out. Alleria and Locust Walker then head to the seat of the Triumvirate in order to remove the void barriers surrounding it, while Varisa went back to the Vindicator to muster up a strike force. The Vindicator forces arrived at the seat just in time for Alleria and Locust Walker to open the way forward. Nazar and his Void Ethereals were after the essence of the Void Naru, so they had delved deeper into the seat of the Triumvirate, but they were ultimately defeated by Alleria and her companions. When the heroes arrived at the Void-corrupted Naru, Alleria used her abilities to siphon the Naru's Void energy, turning her into a Void Elf, and destroying the Naru in the process. The heroes grabbed the last piece of the crown and rushed back to the Vindicator. There, Velen restored the crown of the Triumvirate and prepared his forces for the last strike against the Burning Legion. By this time, Turalyon was able to revive Zira using Light's Heart. Zira was happy to see that Illidan Stormrage had joined their army of the Light and heralded him as the Chosen One. Zira then bound Illidan in light and began to forcibly reform his body back to the way it was before it became demon-like. Illidan, however, resisted and refused to be the Chosen One for Zira, and he ended up killing Zira before the Prime Naru could undo all that he had done to himself. Turalyon was understandably pissed off that his leader was just murdered in front of him, but Velen had been able to calm the Warriors of Light down and began to rally them up for the final fight against Sargeras. The Vindicator, now supercharged by the Crown of the Triumvirate, set off to the Antoran Wastes, the land where the entrance to Antorus was located. They began a non-stop battle as Legion fire shot into the skies of the Vindicator, while the Draenei warship shot an opening into the walls of Antorus. The Azerothian forces pressed into the opening and were quickly met with massive Legion resistance. Sargeras' most demonic and most powerful weapons and warriors lay inside the Burning Throne, but the heroes pushed through. After defeating the Demon's Portal Keeper, they gained access to the Legion's portal system. The Titan spirit Eonar, the Lifebinder, reached out to the Azerothian champions and requested immediate aid. The Legion had invaded her world and meant to capture and torture her, just like they did to Agrimar. The heroes take a portal to the world Eonar's spirit was on and protect her from the Demon Strike Force. After her rescue, Eonar pleaded for the heroes to save the rest of her brethren, and she retreated to the home of the Titans, the seat of the Pantheon. The champions of Azeroth took the portal back to Antorus and quickly began fighting their way to the Legion's prison in order to free the remaining Titan souls. After achieving victory against the prison's jailers, they freed the Pantheon from their torment. Magni stayed behind to help aid the wounded Titans while the rest of the Strike Force set off to sever Argus's world's soul from demon control. Waiting for them at the core of Argus itself was the corrupted avatar of Agrimar. The Avatar eventually fell to the Warriors of Light and rejoined the rest of the Titans, who had all returned back to the seat of the Pantheon. With all the members of the Pantheon united once again, they teleported the heroes who saved them up to the seat of the Pantheon. There, the Titans began to sever Argus's connection to the Burning Legion. The entire time the warriors of the Vindicator were fighting through the Burning Throne, a fiery cloud was covering all of Azeroth. That cloud formed into Sargeras. The Lord of the Burning Legion called upon the world soul of Argus, turning it into a Titan, Argus the Unmaker. The Pantheon began a process that would permanently imprison Sargeras forever, while the heroes of Azeroth fought off the Unmaker. After they defeated Argus the Unmaker and completed the severance between it and the Burning Legion, the Pantheon began to channel their power. As the heroes quickly retreated back to the Vindicator, Illidan stayed behind. After all, what is a demon hunter without any demons to hunt? As the Vindicator blasted off to return home, Sargeras began to fully materialize over Azeroth, and as he drew his planet-sized sword, the Titans unleashed their power, drawing Sargeras away from his prize. But not before that giant sword of his pierced the surface of Azeroth. The former Lord of the Burning Legion was dragged to the seat of the Pantheon, where he was then sealed, and Illidan, elected himself as Sargeras' jailer, took off along with the Titans, as the seat of the Pantheon vanished into the cosmos. With the Burning Legion permanently destroyed, the forces of Azeroth could rejoice. However, there was now a giant Titan sword impaled on the planet. Sargeras' blade had been plunged into the land of Silithus, and there were now two parties heavily invested with the Titan sword. One of them was Magni Bronzebeard, who had received messages from Azeroth that she was in danger, and that the sword had opened a great wound in the world soul, and that the essence of Sargeras was poisoning the planet. Magni was desperate to try and close the wound and cleanse it of the Titan's corrupted essence. The best he could do was reach out to Khadgar, and the two then came up with a temporary solution, like a band-aid basically. They were going to infuse artifacts of great power with the poison essence of Sargeras' sword, siphoning the poison from the sword and thus saving the world soul. And so they reached out to the heroes of Azeroth and requested their artifacts. And so great weapons like the Ashbringer and Doomhammer and many others were used to drain the corrupted essence from the sword in order to heal some of the damage done to the world soul. These infused artifacts were supercharged for a time, but then they dwindled and were reduced to objects without any power whatsoever. The second party interested in Silithus and the giant sword sticking out of it were the goblins. Trade Prince Gallywix had begun excavating the new ore that the Sword of Sargeras dug up. Really, this ore was the crystallized blood of Azeroth that bled through the wound caused by the blade. This crystallized blood contained massive amounts of power, and it had the potential to change the future of Azeroth to the will of whoever collected the most of it. And that about does it. This was a long one, and I appreciate all of y'all who made it to the end. While Legion definitely has its upsides, the absolute bombardment of storylines it tries to give ended up being a huge task for me. And not every storyline is made equal. As much as I like to talk about the Warlock or Rogue Order halls, they literally don't interact with the main plot in any way, shape, or form. So, as usual, I skipped some things here, changed some things there, but all in all, this was all the lore that you needed to know about World of Warcraft Legion. And with that, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one, and take it easy.